Treblinka, August 2nd, 1943. The last train, August 2nd, 1943. Eastern Poland. The summer air over the pine forests near the village of Treblinka is thick with dust. Locomotives hiss along the single rail line that slices through the countryside. A line that once brought thousands every day, and on this morning seems to breathe with its own grim rhythm. Treblinka too stands beyond the trees, a collection of barracks, watchtowers, and barbed wire fences disguised with branches to hide the scale of what happens inside. The station platform still bears the illusion of a functioning depot, a wooden clock without hands, a ticket office with no clerks, fake timetables nailed to the walls. For over a year, this place has consumed life at an industrial pace. More than 800,000 Jews, most from the Warsaw Ghetto and surrounding districts, have been deported here. Few remain longer than a few hours after arrival, yet by mid-1943, something in the machinery begins to falter, not mechanically, but morally. Prisoners forced to maintain the camp's operations begin to understand the cycle too well. They know the routines of the guards, the delivery times of fuel, the hidden routes between workshops, and they begin to whisper the unthinkable. Revolt. The SS garrison of roughly 25 German officers and 90 Ukrainian guards believe Treblinka is unbreakable. The prisoners are starved, unarmed, watched from every tower. Escape is a fantasy. Resistance, they think, is impossible. But beneath the false calm of that morning, the camp's engine house hums with something new. A spark, literal and metaphorical. In a locked storeroom near the railway pit, a handful of prisoners have smuggled hand grenades, pistols, and fuel stolen from the armory. The uprising is about to begin. The anatomy of a death factory. To understand what the Germans were about to lose, one must understand what they built. Treblinka was designed not as a labor camp, but as a machine of extermination, a terminus for trains under Operation Reinhard, the code name for the systematic destruction of Polish Jewry. It opened in July 1942, following Belzec and Sobibor, and was engineered for speed. Each transport train carried between 4,000 and 6,000 people, packed into freight cars. Upon arrival, the illusion of a resettlement camp greeted them. Guards shouted orders in German and Ukrainian, forcing passengers to undress, hand over valuables, and march down what they called the Schlauch, the tube, a camouflaged path leading directly to the gas chambers. Inside the camp, only a few hundred prisoners were kept alive. Their work was to sort belongings, bury bodies, maintain machinery, and clean up the evidence of each transport before the next arrived. These men and women lived in constant terror, knowing any sign of defiance meant immediate execution. Among them were former soldiers, mechanics, carpenters, and railway workers, men who had once operated trains or repaired engines for the German army. Over months of labor, they learned the structure of the camp, the position of fuel tanks, the layout of the barracks, the rotation of guards. This knowledge, routine to the SS, became the blueprint for rebellion. By mid-1943, news of resistance in Sobibor and Warsaw had spread in whispers through the underground. The men at Treblinka realized that their survival could not be endless, but their deaths could mean something if they destroyed the camp before it destroyed them. Planning the impossible. The revolt began not with weapons, but with timing. a prisoner named Dr. Julian Chorądziecki, a Polish army officer and physician, first tried to organize an uprising in early 1943. He planned to bribe a Ukrainian guard for weapons, but was caught and took his own life to avoid revealing names under torture. After his death, leadership passed to Zelman, Zilo, Bloch, Galewski, and Samuel Reisman, who coordinated in absolute secrecy. Their plan was brutally simple: steal weapons from the SS armory by forging keys, distribute gasoline among the workshops disguised in water buckets, set fire to the camps simultaneously, ignite fuel stores, and attack guards, use the chaos to seize the main gate and flee into the forest. For months, they prepared silently. Prisoners who worked in maintenance shops made tools that doubled as crowbars and knives. Gold taken from the belongings of victims was used to bribe sympathetic Ukrainian guards for information. The date chosen, August 2nd, 1943, was calculated around the guards' routine. Most German officers would be swimming in the Bug River that afternoon, escaping the heat. Only a small detachment would remain on duty. The conspirators managed to forge a duplicate key to the camp's armory. At midday, one prisoner slipped inside and removed several rifles and grenades, hiding them in a cart of rags. Another siphoned gasoline from the motor pool into buckets marked drinking water. The stage was set. Every man knew the cost. Success meant a fleeting chance at life. Failure meant certain death. The revolt ignites. At 3:45 p.m., the first smoke appeared. It rose behind the workshop barracks, a thin grey line that quickly thickened into black. Prisoners working near the fuel depot threw their torches onto soaked rags. Within seconds, flames engulfed the roof. Guards shouted, confused, some running toward the blaze, others toward the armory. Then came the first explosion. A grenade hurled at the watchtower. The blast shattered windows and dropped a guard from his post. Chaos swept across Treblinka. Sirens wailed. Prisoners in striped clothing charged the gate armed with stolen rifles, shovels, and bare fists. Others cut the telephone lines. The SS, caught off guard, struggled to organize. Inside the main square, a group of prisoners seized a locomotive engine left idling on the tracks. They drove it forward, derailing one of the incoming transport cars and blocking the rail line, a symbolic act that halted the camp's heartbeat. From the air, smoke columns curled above the forest canopy. Nearby villages could hear the gunfire. Some thought it was a military exercise. Others would later recall the sound as the day Treblinka broke. For nearly 30 minutes, the camp became a battlefield. The SS counterattacked with machine guns from the towers, cutting down dozens as they ran toward the fence. But the flames spread too fast. Fuel barrels detonated near the garage. Barracks collapsed. Prisoners used the fire itself as cover, throwing sand over the barbed wire and diving through the smoke. By the time reinforcements arrived, the camp was burning uncontrollably. Hundreds lay dead, but hundreds more had vanished into the woods. The escape and pursuit of roughly 700 prisoners in Treblinka that day, about 300 made it beyond the perimeter. They scattered into the forest, barefoot, wounded, pursued by dogs and bullets. German and Ukrainian patrols combed the woods for days. Many were recaptured or killed. Locals, fearing punishment, sometimes betrayed escapees to the authorities. Others risked their lives to hide them in barns and attics. By the end of the week, only around 70 survivors remained free. Some joined partisan groups in the surrounding area. A few, such as Samuel Rasman and Chill Reichmann, survived the war and later testified at the Nuremberg trials, ensuring that Treblinka's final act of defiance would not vanish with its ashes. For the German command, the losses were staggering, not in number, but in symbolism. The uprising destroyed infrastructure, burned vital records, and forced the SS to realize that even in their most controlled death factory, rebellion was possible. Deportations through Treblinka halted permanently after the revolt. Within months, the camp was dismantled, its grounds ploughed over and disguised as farmland. The trains, once symbols of German efficiency, no longer came or went. For the first time since 1942, the line to Treblinka went silent. Aftermath and shock. In Berlin, reports of the uprising reached higher command with disbelief. SS logistics officers initially assumed partisans had attacked from outside. Only later did they learn the revolt came from within. For the Nazi leadership obsessed with control, this was more than a breach. It was humiliation. A facility designed for secrecy had not only been exposed but destroyed by its own laborers. Treblinka, once a cog in the extermination machine, became a ruin. The surviving SS officers were reassigned or executed by their own superiors for negligence. Commandant Franz Stangl, who had overseen both Sobibor and Treblinka, fled Europe after the war but was eventually captured in Brazil in 1967. During interrogation, he admitted the revolt should have been impossible. Historians later confirmed that Treblinka's destruction effectively ended Operation Reinhard. Without it, the logistical network that powered mass deportations in Poland collapsed. The Germans shifted their remaining resources toward forced labor camps further west. For the prisoners who lived, Treblinka never truly ended. Many carried scars, both physical and psychological, for life. Yet through testimony, sketches, and quiet recollection, they ensured that the world would know how a group of unarmed men and women turned their oppressors' own tools against them. Legacy of defiance. Today, the site of Treblinka is a memorial field of stone, over 17,000 granite markers symbolizing the destroyed communities of Polish Jewry. No buildings remain, only earth and silence. The tracks end abruptly at a mound of rubble. Visitors walking through the forest still trace the path of the old rail line, now covered in moss. Every few meters, a small plaque bears a town's name: Warsaw, Białystok, Lublin. Each represents those who never returned. Yet within that silence lies something defiant. The uprising of August 2nd, 1943, stands as proof that even inside the darkest machinery of genocide, human will could still resist. It was not an act of victory, but of reclaiming humanity, a final assertion that life could choose its own ending. The German commanders who once sent trains here could never have imagined that their own creation would rise against them. The revolt did not stop the Holocaust, but it shattered the illusion of Nazi invincibility. In the words of survivor Samuel Rasman, "We knew we would die, but we wanted the world to know that we were not sheep led to slaughter. We wanted to die as free men." The trains that once rolled toward Treblinka never returned. The tracks rusted. The forest grew over the platform. But in the memory of those who escaped, the sound of that final uprising, the crack of gunfire, the roar of fire, the breaking of steel, became something else. Not the end of life, but the beginning of truth. And in that truth, the world found one of the rarest stories in history, a moment when the victims of total domination struck back, leaving their captors stunned and their empire of fear burning behind them.